not da. Okay. So some said, let's learn that peah, tree orchards are chayev in peah from the following learning, from the following pasuk. It says kisivtzar karmecha, when you harvest your grape vineyard. So the end of the pasuk says lo sivtzar lo solel acharecha. It says do not be ma'olel behind you. Now normally we learned that means also acharecha means you're supposed to leave a certain type of grape which doesn't grow in clusters but rather goes single fashion on the vine. That's normally the way we learn darshan the word lo solel acharecha with the phrase which says lo solel acharecha, which is at the end of that pasuk. However, here the Yerushalmi learns that phrase differently. Rabbi Yesh Ma'at shmamina. How do you derive from this pasuk? Now again, the derech of the Yerushalmi is, generally, it only brings the beginning of the pasuk, even where the proof is from the end of the pasuk, and the Yerushalmi here is no exception. The Yerushalmi here begins to bring the beginning of the pasuk, Yisivtzar karmecha, even though it's proof that you have to leave peah from trees from the end of the pasuk, which says lo sa'olel acharecha. So the Yerushalmi proves as follows. Mach, what do you derive from this? Rabbi Yonah said, lo tedaktek, do not be careful in taking every last grape which is on the vine. So lo tedaktek means do not be meticulous in taking each and every one. Meaning, leave some of it on the tree. Meaning, leave peah on your tree. Kamada Tamar, on your grapevine, to be specific here. Kamada Tamar, like we learned, V'olel Lamo, it says that, I believe it's Yirmiyahu who davens to Hashem and says, please mete out meticulous punishment to the Babylonians like they meted out towards us. So Olel means to be meticulous and exacting. So we're saying when you harvest, don't be exacting, meaning leave stuff on the tree for the poor people. And also, kisachvo teisecha, and again, this is the beginning of the pasuk. The end of the pasuk says, lo siforer acharecha. What do you learn from the end of the pasuk? It says, lo siforer acharecha. Rabbi Yonah says, pe'er, lo siforer, is like peah. What's a peah? A peah is a corner of the corner, right? So lo siforer is like a peah, meaning that from this we see they're supposed to leave the end of your field to the poor people. Rabbi Yonah said, lo takivu pe'as roshchem. The pe'er is like the pe'ah, meaning the pe'ah of the field. Okay? So from here we see that you should leave the olives. These are olives. The first pasuk of lo solel acharecha was by grapes. This pasuk is by olives. And now the Gemara picks up on this. Umazais v'kerem miuchadim. How are an olive orchard and a vineyard unique in that, or how are they? What are their common denominators? You harvest them all one time, and their fruit can be preserved in the form of grape juice or olive oil, and therefore they are chayiv in peah. So too we derive from this anything which is collected all, at one time. There's one harvest period for it. And you can preserve it over time. Chayav in peah is chayav in peah. Maybe you'll say well, maybe you could say Kerem Zayis are from the Shiva Aminim, of course. They're from the 7 species, right? So maybe you'll say Imak Zayis and Kerem Yuchadim are unique. Shem Mechem Bikurim, that they're Chayv Bikurim, right? You have to give Bikurim from Kerem and Zayis because they're from the Shiva Aminim. So maybe I'll say I've called them Shechem Bikurim Chayv. So to anything else which is chayiv in bikurim is chayiv in peah, but something which is not chayiv in bikurim is not chayiv in peah. Maybe only the shiva aminim are chayiv in peah, not anything else. Tamulomar kitzircha. That's why it says kitzircha in the area of the Torah which speaks about peah. It says kitzircha, which means afilu ktzir ores, even a harvest of rice. Even a harvest of millet, obviously not just the Shivas Aminim. Ask the Gemara, Yomar Zayis, tell us that there's a concept of peah by olives, Vayomer Kerem, and don't tell us the concept of peah by grapevines. Why need both? Says I'm going to tell you why. Well, not yet. Yomer Zayis Vayomer Kerem She'il Nemar Zayis Lo Nemar Kerem. Oh yeah, it is now. She'il Nemar Zayis Lo Nemar Kerem would have just to mention that there's peah by olives and not by grapes. Hayisiam would have said Zayis Shu Potamina Peret. Olives where you do not have to give peret. Peret means the ones you forget on the tree. Okay, you don't have to give peret by zaysim. It doesn't say peret there. So I might say there it's chayv and peah, because we say, well, at least give one aspect to the poor. Kerem shu chayv beperet lo yeh chayv bepeah, but maybe a kerem which is chayv and peret. In other words, from a vineyard you do have to take peret. Zanim already getting that stuff left on the tree, so maybe say it's not chayv and peah, right? Havitzorich hu sheomar kerem. So that teaches us you have to tell us the vineyard that even though the anim are getting something else already from it, which is the peret, you have to give the peah nonetheless. Now, what about vice versa? Lo ye
you take the stuff from the trees and
elu namar kerem, right? Or what about if you would have just written a grapevines, a vineyard, v'lo namar zayis, and you would have written about olive orchards. I would have said kerem shu chay beperet chay bepeah. I would have said a kerem, a vineyard, which is chayiv and peret is chayiv and peah. Then it would have said the exact opposite for it. I would have said grapevines, which are chayiv and peret. Oh, we see that aniyim get grapes. I would say grapes maybe have a double whammy. Once they get peret, so let them get peah as well. However, zayis, right? But zayis she'eino chayiv beperet, eino chayiv bepeah.
All or nothing.
Right, it's either all or nothing, right? Maybe because olives where you don't have to give peret, maybe they don't get peah either. That's why I have to write both zayis and kerem, because of the distinctions. I might have said either double or nothing, or I might have said one in each. So therefore I have to tell us that neither of those things are true. Rather, in grapes you have to give both peret and peah, and in zaysim all you have to give is peah, even though there is no peret. Okay? Says the Gemara, made kol eilanos, I'm sorry, I skipped. Havitzor shumar zaytzor shumar kerem. Yotza zayis. Olives come out, made, and we extrapolate from them al kol eilanos, on all trees, and all trees have peah. V'yotza kerem, and also kerem goes out, v'limei al kol eilanos peret. Now, an interesting. Sorry, it's a question. The Yetze Kerem, let Kerem come out, and Limina Koilonas Perik Hashem Shatz Zayis Limina Koilonas Perik. Yeah, there's a little bit of excess verbiage here. Let me read it from the beginning again. But I didn't necessarily punctuate it correctly. Yotza Zayis, V'limed Ali Lo Koilonas Peah. From olives we extrapolate to all the trees of chayim peah. Period. V'yetze kerem v'limin al koilonos peret. Let's use kerem and learn that all trees have this peret, this stuff you forget tree. Kashem shiur the zayis v'limin al koilonos peah. I.e., let's say just like we extrapolate from olives and all trees, there's the concept of peah. Kach yetze kerem v'limin al koilonos peret. Let's use kerem and teach that by all trees, the stuff you forget on it is also chayiv in, you must give to the aniyim, and let's say that all trees have peret.
Is kerem considered a tree?
What?
Kerem is a vine. Is that still considered a tree?
Still considered a tree, yeah. Any growth, right, anything above ground. So says the Gemara,
stuff on the trees.
Right. Rabbi Yavon said the reason why we don't extrapolate peret from grapes to the rest of the trees in Torah, because Rabbi Yavon davershu shavel lishneim melamid, something which is in common, since grapes and olives are the archetypes in the Torah. The archetypes. So it's the archetypes of Torah. So anything which is common between the two of them, we extrapolate to the rest of the trees, right? V'darvish name, something which is not in common for both of them, i.e., peret, we do not extrapolate. Edom Lamed does not. We do not extrapolate from there to the rest of the trees. Now, Daiti to Rabbi Shmuel Nicha. According to Rabbi Shmuel, this is good. What is Rabbi Shmuel? Rabbi Shmuel Darsh. Rabbi Shmuel said, "Kol davar he darshan he paskin. Kol davar shu b'chlau." I don't know if paskin is the right word. He issued a principle. Kol davar shu b'chlau. Anything which is included in a general principle, the yotza lidon b'davar chadash, and came out of the general principle to teach you a new thing. Nekar mina klal, it's uprooted from the general principle. V'areu b'chidusho, and now it's new. It stands on its own. It's distinct. According to this, tzarich sheyomar peah b'kerem. I understand why it must say peah by kerem. Why must it say peah by kerem? Because kerem is unique. It's got parrot. Maybe it's different. Since it's different, therefore it's a chiddush. And since it's a chiddush, I would not have known that there's peah by kerem unless the Torah had said explicitly that there's peah by kerem. Again, Rabbi Shmuel says it's called the Vashaya b'chlal. V'yotza min klal lodun hareu b'chidusho. Anything which was in the cloud and came out of the cloud with some new principle. It was part of a general group of trees, and it came out, and now it has a specific new detail, which is, in the case of grapevine, parrot, right? So there's Rabbi Shmuel says, once it's out there on a limb, no pun intended, once it's out there on the limb by itself, so therefore in that you can't apply all the general principles to it. Says the Gemara, according to him, I understand why you have to write specifically by trees that there's peah. By grapevines that there's peah, because since grapevines are unique, that they have parrot, maybe they don't have peah, right? Could be that they're unique. So that's why you have to tell me lo sola acharecha that there's peah by grapevines as well. But al das rabbanon, do you have a place, Uncle?
No.
Al das rabbanon.
I didn't follow what you're saying, though. You know, I tried to, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know.
El al daitin rabbanon.
Oh, okay.
Al daitin rabbanon, but according to the logic of the rabbis, the inun, I mean, who we know say, hareyu bichlolav, hareyu b'chidusho, the stuff which has new concepts attached to it, such as the grapevines, which have the concept parrot, still do not lose the advantage of being under the general category of trees. They're still trees. It's true, they're specialized trees. They have parrot in them, but they're still trees. The stuff that you leave on the forget on the tree, like shicha by grain.
What's the difference between that and olives? Why would that?
We don't know. So there's a kasuv. But it's different. There is no such thing as parrot by olives. By olives, even if you got them on the tree and go back and get them. Why is it like that? I can't tell you for sure. But that's what it is. So in any event, so according to Rabbanan who say that anything which was in the cloud,
because they take it off easy, it all comes off.
Could be. There must be some logic to it.
The other stuff is harder to prune.
Could be. I don't know. There is some logic to it. What it is, I don't know. Especially since I'm a city slicker, what do I know about what trees look like?
You don't have the stuff they have today.
So according to again, al das the Rabbanan dinu name Rebbe Chov Rebbe Chidusha Kol Rabbanan who say that anything which has a novel concept does not lose the characteristics of the general category. So therefore, laser dover never pair by kerem. Why do they have to say pair by kerem? It's part of the subset of trees. So it's part of the subset of. It's just a subset of trees. So it's just a subset of trees. So of course it has payah. But I need a special xeris custom to teach me that there's payah. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Avun. Rabbi Avun said, "Ilu lo yotza ela kerem, yo'us hava makshayo." If there was the only exception in the Torah was if the only time it said pay on the Torah by a specific tree was by kerem, you'd have a good question on Rabbana. Why does it have to tell you pay by kerem? They're part of the generality of trees. However, achshav shiyatza kerem vizayis. Bear in mind, how do we know that there's kerem? But I I shouldn't tell you the bears in mind because I didn't make it clear to you tonight. The Gemara started, when we started the Gemara tonight, we started with the assumption that we're going to learn out Peah for trees from somewhere else. From Lo Salech Recha by grapevines, and from the pasuk of Lo Siftok Lo Sfarech Recha by olive trees. However, yesterday we already learned a drasha which teaches us that there's Peah by trees. The drasha we learned yesterday is Sadcha. It's the actual word Sadcha, which it says by Peah, and that Sadcha teaches us that even trees are Chayv and Peah. So now, on Amud Aleph, the Gemara was going the entire time with the Kerem and Zayis derivation. But now, at the bottom of Amud, now we're going back to the Sada derivation. And we're saying, okay, after we found the derivation by Kerem and Zayis, based on the previous Gemara which we had learned yesterday, that there's also a pasuk of Sadcha. So now I have it seems to be a lot of extra learning. In other words, I have Sadcha. Why do I need Kerem and why do I need Zayis as well? So now by Kerem I need it, according to Rabbi Shmuel, because Rabbi Shmuel says any Chiddush loses any subcategory which has unique principle, unique characteristics, loses the characteristics of the general category. So therefore I might have thought Kerem loses its Chiv and Peah. That's why the Torah to write it's Chayv and Peah. According to Rabbanan, we said that was difficult. Because according to Rabbanan, any specific category which has unique parameters does not lose the general category definition. And therefore, according to Rabbanan, so we would say, it seems, that Kerem would be Chayv and Peah, even though it's Chayv also impaired, even though it has unique qualities, because it doesn't lose the qualities of the general category. Now, the Gemara has to answer that question. Again, we're saying that now, let's look at the whole picture. We have Sadcha, which teaches us all trees. We have Lo Se'ola Acharecha by Kerem. We have Lo Sefar Acharecha by Zayis. So it says more, why do I need all three? And that's what he's focusing on now. It says, again, Rabbi Avun. Avun said, Ilu lo yotzei kerem, if the only exception, which was written outside of the general category, is kerem, would be gray, finds Yosef HaMakshai would have been asking the question. Achshav shiyotza kerem vizayis. Now I know that that's not true. There are two exceptions, both kerem and zayis. Did I skip? No. Achshav shiyotza kerem vizayis. Ilu nemar zayis v'lo nemar kerem. I tell you why they're both mentioned. Because were you both just to mention Zayis and not Kerem, Hayisi Omer, I would have said Zayis shu poter mi peret chayav. A Zayis which is exempt from peret is chayav v'peah. Kerem shu chayav v'peret, a Kerem which is susceptible to peret, ye poter mi peah, maybe that is poter from peah. Kimad temar gabi katsir. Like I say by the harvest. Sorry, that's the end of the sentence. Period. In other words, now, why did I have to write? The Yerushalmi is really evading one question. The Yerushalmi is answering one question but evading another, and the Yerushalmi doesn't address the other question. The Yerushalmi is answering, okay, why do I have to write Kerem? I'll tell you why. Because since I wrote Zayis, I have to write Kerem. Because Zayis is a tree which is singled out, and we're told is chayav in peah, and not in peret. So I might say that Kerem, which is chayav in peret, is not chayav in peah. That's why I had to write Kerem to tell me that even Kerem is chayav in peah. The question Yerushalmi begs and doesn't answer though is, so why was Zayis singled out? Why does it say lo sefarach recha by Zayis? Don't single out Zayis either. Don't do me any favors. Don't single out Zayis and don't single out Kerem. In other words, once it says Sadcha, I know all trees. I don't have to write Zayis. Yes, once I wrote Zayis, I also have to write Kerem. But why do I have to write Zayis? So it's not clear.
because of the parrot issue.
No.
No, well, carom is the vine.
No, but Zayas doesn't have, no trees have parrot, and neither does Zayas. The only tree which has parrot is grapevine. The only trees that have parrot is grapevines. So the kasha is...
That's a reason for having the carom then.
Right, but why Zayas?
Right, not the Zayas. So we don't have really an understanding of why by Zayas it says Peah, not by... Why by Zayas the Torah saw it fit to repeat that it has Peah.
Maybe because it's such a unique quality of olives, it's so important to...
Maybe, one could say Svaris, but I'm saying the Yerushalmi doesn't answer the question. Okay? Says one new thing. We're in the first wide line on Chesma base. Kamad Tamar Gabi, could you have the place, Uncle?
No, I don't know what. It doesn't have the.
I see. I'm going to have to make you photocopies because it's not the same, not exactly the same gear. So you're right.
So much for that. So if they can hold. Yeah, you have different. Yeah. It's
here, Kamad Tamar. Kamad Tamar Gabi Peah. Okay. Kamad Tamar Gabi Peah. Just like you said by.
So it's okay. All right.
We're over here. Kamad Tamar Gabi Peah. Now we're at by you. We're in the first wide line on Chesma base. Kamad Tamar.
Okay.
Kamad Tamar Gabi Peah, like it says by Peah. Kamad Tamar Gabi Kotzir. Excuse me. Like it says by Kotzir. Just like we said by Peah, what is defined as a harvest which requires Peah? Something where you gather all of the crop in one period of the year and you keep it and preserve it. That's Chayv Peah. Okay. Let's say it's sending by workers. There's halacha that a worker who's working on the field gets to eat from the produce. You know that? Yeah. So maybe I'll say that what does he get to eat from? It says when he's harvesting, right? So maybe it's only the same things which fulfill the parameters of harvest by Peah. Those are the things that she gets to eat from by work around the field, which would exclude most fruit. Because most fruit, at least citrus fruit, I shouldn't say most fruit. Most citrus fruit is not gathered at one time during the year. It's gathered over the course of time as each one ripens. That's what esrogim are like, right? Esrogim vary in ripening throughout the year. So therefore, I might say, so that would preclude the poel, the worker, from eating from many of the things he harvests. Rabbi Yehuda said, Shani, poel's different. Shani is shoneh. The Chsiv, it says, when you pluck raw wheat, melilos is raw wheat which you rub off the kernel when you take it off the tree. Afilu midavar she'ein l'kiyum means that even something which you're not going to preserve, right? It's not something which you just pop right into your mouth. When do you preserve things? When you harvest a large amount and you put it into your storehouse. So here, even kind of, let's call it an immediate harvest is chayev. It can be considered to be part and parcel of the category in which the worker, can eat. Why? Because where it brings down the worker eating, it doesn't say uvekutz ro or bekitzir cha. It says v'katafta melilos, when you pluck little pieces, one at a time even. So from this we see that even when you're doing stuff which is not chayiv and peah, because you're doing stuff which you're not going to make a large harvest and put in your warehouse, nonetheless, there's a chiyuv of allowing the worker to eat. Tani Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yossi said, "Rot ve'tmarim," fat, thick, juicy dates, literally saucy dates, are poter mipturim min hapeah. They're exempt from peah. Levisha ein rishon shebahem mamtin la'achron yos. The first one among them, in other words, the ones which ripen early, don't wait until the last one to become ripe. Yos means literally pretty. But in other words, we harvest them in succession. It's not likitoso ke'achas. Once one is ripe, we take it and we leave the other on the vine to develop. So therefore, it's not likitoso ke'achas. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Yossi said, my time of the Rabbanu, what's the logic of Rabbanu who argue on? Oh, this can't be Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda. Somebody Rabbi Yossi, somebody else, because he's explaining Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda.
He has Rabbi Yehuda.
He does?
Yes.
So it's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda explaining his own logic? That's what's happening. Because here it says, Tani Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, Mer Rotvi Tamarim, Turim Min HaPeah, Vish Ein Rishish Ben Manti Lachron Yos. Hom Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, my time. Oh, I see. Rabbi Yossi Huda is explaining the logic of Rabbanu who argue on him. No. This Hom Rabbi Yossi is extra. So it's Tani Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda, Mer Rotvi Tamarim, Turim Min HaPeah, Vish Ein Rishish Ben Manti Lachron Yos. Period. Take out the next line. Now, my time of the Rabbanon. Now the Gemara asks, what's the logic of Rabbanon who argue Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda? Okay?
That's not the way it functions.
Okay, I forget. What can I do? I don't know what else to read it. So Rabbi Zera said, because they all require crevices at once. Which means, a date is ripe when is suitable to eat when it gets little crevices in the skin. When we get them, they're really shriveled. But even when they're fresh, there are little crevices in the skin. So therefore, cracks, nooks, the peaks and valleys. So therefore, they all get those peaks and valleys at once. It's true that we leave some of them then on the tree, and some of them we take right away, because then afterwards, there are varying rates at which they're fully developed. But the bare minimum development is when they get these nooks and crannies, and that happens at the same time during the year. So therefore, it's Chayv and Peah. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Akuli, Rabbi Shimon Levi, Tarvayo Omru, they both said kuklus, a certain type of produce. I don't know what it is. Or kuklus is considered to be a liyerek, ulemaisers, uleshvis, ulepeah, ulvikurim. It's like a vegetable in terms of meiser, and in terms of shmita, and in terms of peah, which means it's exempt from peah, and in terms of bikurim, which means, of course, it's exempt from bikurim. However, ulanadarim tzricha, kulkus is like one of these tomato type things. We don't know if it's not a question of whether it's a fruit or a vegetable. It's not clear. So they're saying botanically it's a vegetable. I don't know what a kulkus is, but botanically it's a vegetable. And therefore, for everything which has to do with halachos of botany, such as meiser, shmita, and all that, its characteristics are all those of a vegetable. However, some people regard it as a fruit. So therefore, since that's the case, we don't know. A person takes a netter, he's going to abstain from fruit. Does that include a kulkus or not? When people say fruit, do they mean botanical fruit? Or they mean even what people regard as fruit? And therefore, we don't know what to do with the kulkus. Okay? Whatever it is. All right, new Mishnah. Halacha Lola munose mishum peah. Upatamina maisers achi mareach. You can continually give peah from your field, and all that peah is exempt from meiser until you're mimareach, until you smooth over the pile. Now, this is a shocking thing, and the Gemara is going to pick up on this. This means even after you harvest, you can still take peah off the tolush off the kernels which are not just harvested, but are threshed and winnowed and all that kind of stuff until you smooth over the pile.
Doesn't that contradict?
Yes, the Gemara is going to ask on this. So it says the Gemara, "V'noitel mina." We're at the top of Testament Aleph now. "V'noitel mina goyren v'zorea." It says that you can take grain from your silo and plant it. Upatamina meiser sarach merech, and you don't have to give meiser on the seeds of grain which you're planting, unless you've already smoothed over the pile. Umachil lebehema lechayev ofu patamina meisers, and you can give your grain to animals, domestic and non-domesticated, and to birds, and they're exempt from meiser sarach merech until you smooth over the pile. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, this is all true according to Rabbi Akiva. Kohen v'Levi shlochus agorin es agorin. A Kohen and Levi, you bought the silo. HaMaiser Shalem, when later they take off the Maisers, they get to keep the Maisers, or the Kutshum, or whatever it is, unless the pile was smoothed over before they bought it. And why that should make a difference, the Gemara is going to discuss. If you sanctify, you consecrate the grain, and then it's redeemed, you're chayav a meiser ad shimerecha gizbar, unless who did the smoothing over the pile? The treasurer of hekdesh. In that case, it's the miruach is biyad hekdesh. You're exempt afterwards. You don't have to give trumas and meisers from it. Okay, now Rabbi Yossi. Now comes a very difficult Gemara. This, by the way, now I want to tell you just on a tangent before we do it, that this I see. Now I'm seeing almost daily, but you see here for Gemaras like this, why there's a tremendous taiva to write Perushim on the Yerushalmi. Because you could say anything you want and get away with it. Which is what I'm about to do. Because all the Mefarshim here, I'll tell you, all the Mefarshim start with a preconceived notion, which is preposterous. And the Ridbaz here in the bottom says, this notion which I'm proceeding with, which he himself proceeds with, is crazy. But the way they learn the Gemara Pashut is that if you take Peah from your grain after you harvest it, it's exempt from Meiser. But Truma you have to give. Because it says in our Mishnah, Upater min ha-Meisers ad shimareach. So you say, Meiser, you're exempt. But Truma you have to give, which is kakamemi. There should be no distinction.
They didn't distinguish it.
No, nobody's ever distinguished. And whenever you say in whenever Mishnayos you find Potter Min HaMeisers, it always includes both Trumas and Meisers. But there's a line which bothers them, which forces them to say that, which of course we have to try tonight to try and avoid, because again, this is an idea which is almost untenable. Even though the Pnei Moshe and Ridbaz proceed with it. Okay, after that exciting prelude, let's see what this Gemara says. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Zafti, B'Shem Rabbi Avo, and Rabbi Nechemia Bar Ukvan, Umatibon, some said B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, said the following statement. Amazing statement. And again, right now, immediately in explaining, I'm departing from what the Achronim say here. Bear in mind, everybody on the page is an Achron in this Masechta. Rabbi, what's his name? Eliezer Eisenberg told me that he once said over Pshat in Yerushalmi to Reb Moshe, who was his grandfather by marriage. He's married to Reb Moshe's granddaughter. And he said the Pnei Moshe must be wrong. You have to argue in the Pnei Moshe. So Reb Moshe said, okay, big deal. It's an Achron. Of course you can argue on it.
He could say
okay. No, I take this as Askama. Okay. So here we say, Rav Yochanan says, Hifrish bikurim mikrim memurach. You took bikurim from a silo which has been smoothed over. Bikurim. When do you normally take bikurim? Yeah, from what?
From the trees.
From the first fruit of the trees.
Yeah.
You didn't take it from the first fruit on the tree. You harvested it. It's in your silo. After miruach, you took up bikurim. Now, that's weird, right? Yeah, usually tie a little thing around it, right? But one thing you would accomplish, says the Gemara. Hivrish bikurim mikrim memurach pater mitruma gedol. You don't have to give truma anymore from it. Why is that? Because bikurim and truma have the same parameters. They both go to the Kohen. So therefore, the Gemara is saying one thing you gained. I know if you fulfill the mitzvah bikurim, but truma you gave. The bikurim is truma. Okay? That's logical, right? Says the Gemara, but hifrish bikurim mikrim memurach pater mitruma gedol. I'm a Rabbi Chagai, call me Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Chagai said in front of Rabbi Yossi, Masniso Amrakeh. I'll prove that to you from the Mishnah. This is amazing what the Gemara is about to do. What does it say in the Mishnah? No same Peah. You always give. You have to give Peah. Upater min ha-Meiser ad shimareach, and you're exempt from Meiser until you're mimareach. Okay, that's what it said in our Mishnah. Ha-mireach But if you're mimareach, chayev. You're already chayev. You're chayev in Meiser. But now, the Yerushalmi does make this deal. There's nothing I can do about it. The Yerushalmi says, Mashenkin b'truma. It sounds like, however, even after miruach, although you're chayev in Meiser, you're exempt from truma. Says Yerushalmi, how could this be?
He says bikurim instead of truma.
Oh, of course. Well, he wanted, because there's a major problem with saying Mashenkin b'truma. Right, that's why he changes the girsa. But that's a new pshat. That's the Rash. So Rash Siraleo's pshat, obviously, whose girsa he had, which is interesting because the Rash Siraleo obviously changed it because of the difficulty with the current girsa. Okay, very good. I didn't know the Rash Siraleo changed it. Mashenkin b'truma, as opposed to truma, he's not chayvin. As the Gemara. So if that's the case, what are we proving for this? What are we proving? We're proving that the truma must be included in the bikurim. Our Mishnah means to say, what our Mishnah means to say, according to this pshat, is that when you took off the peah after miruach, why taking a peah after miruach? It must be because you forgot to take off peah before in the field, what was still out in the field. Or if you got peah, you probably forgot something else. What else did you forget? Bikurim. No, truma you don't take out after miruach. So therefore he's saying our Mishnah must be assuming that this is a type of guy who's taking both bikurim and peah out of his new nismareach grain, the grain in which you just did miruach, which is chayiv now in truma. But since he's taking off now peah, mistama he's taking off bikurim as well. If he's taking off bikurim, it's true. I don't know if he fulfills the mitzvah bikurim, but that potters up is truma. So he's saying that when you take off bikurim, you are now exempt from truma, is proven in our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah, by definition, is telling us that when you're taking off the bikurim and peah, all the stuff which you should have taken off when it was out in the field, you're taking off now from your silo. When it's been smoothed out, it's telling you what do you have to take off afterwards? Only meiser. Oh, only meiser. What happened to the truma? Must be the bikurim patters up the truma. That's what our Mishnah is telling us. Okay? Says the Gemara, wait. Vilna, now I too have to put a little bit of sleight of hand in this next line. I grant you that. Vilna after bikurim yechayev. Afapi shalom yirech. Now, I'd rather change, even though I can read it with the afapi, I'd rather change the afapi to ad. Basically, it's the same thing. But what our question is, so let the Mishnah tell me. Just like it told me that you give peah before miruach and you put it from meiser, why does the Mishnah tell us that you give bikurim before miruach? V'leima, it's in our Mishnah, bikurim yechayev ad shalom yirech. Right? Why does it mention it explicitly in our Mishnah? It's bothering me. Why does the Mishnah not tell us about this bikurim business? Says Gemara, Vaida Amrado. Now, Vaida, what Vaida means is a very big machlokas here. The Gillian Ashas says Vaida is somebody's name. Like Vidal, I guess. That's somebody's name. There are other interpretations here. The Mashbiach says it means you don't have to say this. Vaida Amrado is Ain't Tzorech Lo Marzeh. I'm not sure what the etymology is, but he says, why don't you have to say it? I like the Mashbiach Shra because it fits with what I'm going to say. Why don't you have to say Bikurim in our Mishnah? Because Lama Nikra Shmi Bikurim. Why are they called Bikurim? Shem Bikurim Lakol. Because they come first. Anything which precedes its friend, his friend is also chayiv in it. Meaning, that when our Mishnah says that you have to take peah off, even though you already harvested, obviously bikurim, which are the first, which come first, they also have to be taken off as well. So what he's responding is that although it's not explicit in our Mishnah, that if you harvested without taking off peah or bikurim, you have to take off bikurim and peah, it's implicit. by the very nature of Bikurim, which means they're the first fruit, we understand, you forgot Peah, Mistam, you forgot Bikurim as well. Take them both off. That's it. That's the hard part. So what we learned here is that if you take Bikurim, if you forgot to take Bikurim off out in the field, when you harvest, you take off Bikurim. If you took off the Bikurim and Peah prior to Miruach, so then the Bikurim and Peah are exempt from Maisrus, of course, and they have their status of Bikurim as Peah. If you took out the Bikurim after Miruach, it's not clear if the Bikurim has the status of Bikurim. But what does it achieve for you? It is your Truma. Now, even if it does have status, we just want to make it clear. Let's say, for argument's sake, Bikurim after Miruach are Bikurim. But they still covers Truma. You know why? Because what's the shiur for Bikurim? Guess. What? How much you have to give? Guess. No, the Raisa. Mashu, right? A Mashu. How much you have to give for Truma? The Raisa? A Mashu. So therefore, as long as the Bikurim has two Mashus in it, so Mimela, Yotze both Bikurim and Truma, even after Miruach, right? So I don't know. Again, I'm not sure if you take Bikurim off after Miruach, or Yotze Bikurim as well, besides Truma, but it wouldn't be a problem for me to say so, because the Bikurim can have two Mashus, and then part of that Mashu is Bikurim and the other part is Truma. Okay?
This will go back to old custom, you have to have the intent.
I think you have to have the intent to do this. I think so, but I can't guarantee it. Could be Bikurim and Truma are so similar that you don't even have to have the intent. I don't know. Okay, says the Gemara. Now we have a more basic question though. Getting back to our Mishnah, after Peah is over after you harvested your field, right? There ain't no Peah after you harvested. We need to. We said at the very least you have to leave the last stalk and all that kind of stuff. So what is this Peah after you harvested? So how can we exempt from Maisrus? Says more, you know what? I'll tell you. Masnis in the Beis Shammai. Our mission is going like Beis Shammai. The Beis Shammai says Hefker Franim is Hefker. So big machlok is Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says you can't have Hefker unless it's Hefker both for rich people and poor people. There's no such thing as Hefker just for poor people. So you couldn't, according to Beis Hillel, you can't have a scenario of our Mishnah. You can make stuff Hefker after you harvested it, and if you make it Hefker, it's also exempt from Trumas and Maisus. But if you made it Hefker, it's got to be Hefker both for, according to Beis Hillel, both for rich and poor people. Beis Shammai says there's such a thing as Hefker only for poor people. According to Beis Shammai, I understand our Mishnah very well. In Beis Shammai, it's not really Peah after you harvest it. What is it? Hefker Anim. Hefker for poor people only. And since it's Hefker for poor people only, that's why it's tantamount to Peah. Before Miruach, that's right. If he made it Hefker before Miruach, you don't have to take off Trumas and Maisrus. You're not. If you made Hefker after Miruach, it is Chayv and Trumas and Maisrus. Our Mishnah says that Chayev what? No. Beis Shammai Hefker Niyim is Hefker. So it's Hefker before Miruach, and neither is the Ani. Nobody's Chayev and Trumas. You are. Right, because no such thing as Hefker Lanim. Right. You have to make it Hefker Fanim and Ashirim, or it'd be parts from Trumas and Maisrus. Okay. I've asked you the Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Akiva said goes Chanuyas Beis Chanan, even though Chanuyas Beis Chanan are wrong. Akiva's right; they're traveling along the same path. The Rabbi Akiva said in our Mishnah, if you take grain from your silo, it's already after Miruach and plant. Oh no, not after Miruach. I think it is after Miruach. You take grain before it's Miruach, and you give it to Behemoth, Chayas, and Ophos, you're parted from Trumas and Maisrus. Okay, this is even though if you take it yourself to eat, you're Chayav with Trumas and Maisrus. If you give it to an animal, you're exempt. So how does Rabbi Akiva know that? How's it you know that even when your animals eat it, you're exempt? So it says the Gemara, he learns it the same way Chanius Beis Chanon learned. The Tani we learned, Lama Chorbu Chanius Beis Bnei Chanon. Why were Chanius Bnei Chanon was a place? Why were the places called Chanius Bnei Chanon destroyed? Gimel Shani Korm Shechora Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, say, in 68 or 70, depending whose calendar you use. So they were destroyed 3 years earlier than that, or 65 or 67, right? So why they destroyed 3 years earlier is a greater punishment. Shayu Motziim Perosei Min HaMaisrus. They had a great drasha to exempt all their fruit from Trumas and Maisrus. Look what they did. You see these guys were Jews. Look what they did. They used to darshan, David Darshinan, Aser Ta'aser. You, Meiser, the person who harvests, Prat Lokeach. So right at the bat, they patterned half the population from Trumas and Maisrus. Because it means the farmer has to harvest, has to take off Trumas and Maisrus, not the buyer. Prat Lo Aser Ta'aser, you the harvester, not the buyer. Okay? So they patterned all the buyers. Then they darshan v'achalta, and you shall eat prat l'moicher. That excludes all the sellers, because they're not eating. So both sellers and buyers are exempt from Trumas and Maisrus. So in Chanios Beis Chanan, the only people who took of Trumas and Maisrus were the poor Nebuchal farmers who ate their own produce. But anybody who sold, or anybody who bought, was exempt from Trumas and Maisrus. So for making this big drasha, this very large, very cute drasha, they got destroyed 3 years before everybody else. Now the thing is that, however, there's a shred of truth in what they were saying, because they darshan v'achalta, and you shall when you eat, right? So they darshan correctly. They said dafke if you eat it, not if you sell it. We don't dash that, but we darshan v'achalta v'lo achilas behema chayav ofos. If you eat it, you're chayav in Trumas and Maisrus immediately. But if your animal eats it, as long as it's before miruach, it's exempt from Trumas and Maisrus. Okay? Says the Gemara.
Pardon my ignorance.
Yeah.
What is the halacha when you carry it over the threshold of the silo?
No, that's the threshold of your house.
Oh.
Threshold of your house, not the threshold of your house. So. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah said, Mr. Zuger, the Mishnah said that if you chayiv, if a Levi buys, or a Kohen buys, the grain in the silo before miruach, and then he takes off the truma and meiser, he gets to keep it himself. The Kohen keeps the truma, the Levi keeps the meiser. It's from a Mishnah was clear. If you bought it after miruach, the same silo, the Levi cannot keep the trumas, or the Kohen cannot keep the trumas, nor Levi keep the meisers. He has to give them. Kohen must give them to another Kohen, or Levi to another Levi. Why? Says the Gemara. They find the Kohen and Leviim shelo yukovtim legitos ulegronos. They shouldn't jump all the time to the wine presses and to the silos in order to buy the grain. It's not dignified. So therefore, in order to make sure they didn't buy it, they kept them away from it. They're saying that if they bought it after miruach, they have to give it away to some other Kohen and some other Levi, the trumas and meisers thereof. What about a tabach Kohen? What about if you have a Kohen who's a shochet? Can he keep the zrol chaim and keva, the parts of the animal which go to the Kohen, the tongue, the cheeks, and I mean the tongue, the zroa, the forearm, the l'chayim are the cheeks and the tongue, and the cave are the stomach. Can he keep them for himself? Okay, so it's a machlokas. No, it's not a machlokas. You confused me. The answer is no. The question is when it becomes no. Chavraya b'shem Rabbi Shimon Levi say potlo Shabbos echad. For the first week he's in business, he can keep them to himself. Afterwards, he has to give them all to other Kohanim. Rabbi Yossi, as Lisa Daroim, I went down to the south. V'shamitz Rabbi Chanan avoid Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon Levi, who says Patlei Shabbos Achaz, the first week he's exempt. Rabbi Yehuda Medami Leilo Hada. Rabbi Yehuda likens it to our case. Knas konsulem. They gave them a knas, meaning we took it away from them because otherwise, if people, the Kohanim will all become butchers, shreichtim, in order they should keep the Zrol Chaim and Keva themselves. Amalei Rabbi Yisrael said, wait, v'imashum knas, if it's a knas, afilu Shabbos achos lo yiftar lei. Let's not even let him keep it for the first week. Why would we let him keep it first week? All right, good question, but nonetheless, it is a knas. Obviously, it's a knas. It can't be d'oraisa. D'oraisa, of course, the Kohen can keep his own Zerol Chaim and Keva. It's a rabbinic enactment. What about a Chenvani Kohen? What about he's not the shaychet, he's a butcher? Now, what's the difference between a shaychet and a butcher? You'll ask. You'll be a good question. The difference is that a shaychet is shaychet his own animals. A Chenvani is an agent. He's an agent for the shaychet. So he's kind of a middleman, a broker, an animal broker, slaughtered animal broker. So says the Gemara, Chenvani Kohen Rabbi Omar, Pochlo Shabbos Achas. He also, the first week he's in business, he can take the Zerol Chaim and Keva of the animals who he's brokering and keep them for himself. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Omar in Pochlo Shabbos Echad. He says we don't even give him 1 week. So that's when I'll daita to Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Yossi, man what? Bein chenvoni tabach. What's the tree? A chenvoni would only give a week, and a butcher we give a week. It says more chenvoni yachol harim. A chenvoni, he could say he's an agent for Yisrael's animal who's exempt. He could say he's an agent for a Kohen's animal which is exempt from Zerol Chaim and Keva. He says, Zerol Chaim and Keva, they're getting kept by the Kohen himself, who's the slaughterer, right? But he might be lying. Maybe this comes from Yisrael's animal, which is Chaim, Zerol Chaim and Keva, and he's just saying in order to keep it for himself. So therefore, we're afraid that he's being treacherous. In other words, that he has Yisrael butchers shaychet animals which he's selling, which is real Chaim, Zerol Chaim and Keva, and he's keeping it to himself. Whereas the tabach, yachol harim, by a shochet who shechted his own animals, we know he's a Kohen Yisrael. We don't buy a company, we don't know who he's representing. So we're afraid he's going to pull some fast ones. During that week, we let him keep it for himself. By a tabach, we know who's representing. He's representing himself. He owns the animals. So therefore, we know he's the Kohen Yisrael. We don't have to be concerned about it cheating us. So we give him a week, which he keeps to keep it for himself.
And tabach was never an agent for someone else's animals?
No, not according to this Gemara. Tabach is the shaychet. The chenvani is the agent. Okay, the storekeeper is the agent.
And we don't let him.
We don't even give him a week to keep it because we're afraid he's going to be representing Yisrael and claim that he's representing a Kohen and is going to keep it for himself. Okay? Says the Gemara, Tani, we learned. Lo nechlu is a fascinating Gemara. Look at see if you can catch what's wrong with this Gemara. Remember, you know the pictures. What's wrong with this picture? Look at the next line. What's wrong with this Gemara? Tani lo nechluku Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did not have a machlokas. What's wrong with this? Same person, right? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi are both the same person. Not in the Yerushalmi. In the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi are not necessarily the same person. We don't know. So there's one interpretation which says, I saw one of the Rishonim says, one of the people in the back says that Reish Beis Yud is supposed to be Rabbi Yossi. It's a Rashi Tevis. But and another Girsa says this is Berebi. Berebi is a title. There's a title named Berebi.
It
says Berebi there. He has Berebi. But it happens, it seems, although it's the first time we've seen it, it seems that it happens several times in the Yerushalmi, that it says Rebbe arguing on Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Okay? So we learned in the Brisa. Kani lo nelchu Rebbe Rabbi Yehuda Nasi al lokeach peros mechubar min hagoy. If you bought fruit which is still connected to the ground from a goy shein chayv meiser, so shili chayv meiser. V'al sheisol shenichdas tachtot. And if you bought fruit from the Yisrael who bought from the goy, obviously you're also chayv meisers. V'al keach peros netush min hagoy. Nobody argued that if you bought already fruit which is already harvested from a goy, shein p'tur min ha-meiser. You go to a store, you go to Dominic's, right, and you buy fruit, and even in Eretz Yisrael. You go to a non-Jewish person, you buy the fruit from him, it's exempt from meisers. What did they argue on? You bought fruit from your friend in a year of Meiserani, and you yourself are okay. Well, this is my look. So let me not give it away. I bought food from you in a Meiser Ani year. You had not yet taken off Meiser Ani. That's the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycle. I buy it. Now, what salach do I have to give Meiser Ani? So look here. Rabbi Nasi Yomer, even though I'm a poor kohelik, I still have to give Meiser Ani. I can't keep it for myself. Just like we learn our Mishnah. The lady who buys the harvested grain which is ready to smooth over can't keep the meises for himself. The Tabach Kohen can't keep the Zroel Chaim and Kev for himself. I can't keep the Meiser Ani for myself. Says the Gemara. Again, the poor guy who buys says I can't keep the Meiser Ani for himself. Gotta give it away. Rabbi Yomer, no. If I'm rich, I gotta give it up. Only if I'm poor, I get to keep the Meiser Ani myself. I have to tithe it, but I get to keep it. My time with Rabbi Nasi. What's the Hach Rabbi Nasi? So says the Gemara, a person, if you're an Ani and you're harvesting your field, you have to give leket shilchon peah. You can't take it yourself. You gotta leave it. So too, Ken lo yitzka Meiser Ani. You can't take your own Meiser Ani. My time with the Rebbe, that's a good svara. What does Rebbe do with that? Rebbe says, leket shilchon peah ain't toivlin. Leket shilchon peah, there's no such thing as leket shilchon peah prior to it being tithed. You gotta forget it. You gotta, both leket and shilchon are forgetting things, or you have to leave it. So it's something which you are required to do. Once you're required to do, it's not yours anymore. You have to give it up. By Meiser Ani, we hold according to this Gemara, it existed in theory when you bought it already. It's not something which you must do. It's extant. This Gemara holds like the principle we saw several times probably. Matanos shlohurmu k'mishuhurmu danya. In other words, Meiser Ani is there in the fruit, even though you don't see it right now. Leket shilchon peah are not there in the fruit. You, as the Baal Boss, must bring them into fruition. So therefore, if you have to bring them into fruition, you must therefore dispense with them outside of yourself. Whereas Meiser Ani, it exists in principle as being a tenth of this fruit here. So therefore, when you bought the stock of fruit, you bought the rights to the Meiser Ani together with buying the fruit. That's his distinction. Says the Gemara. Again, my time with the Rebbe, leket shilchon peah ain't toivlin. They don't exist in the tevel state. Meiser Ani tovel already exists in the tevel state. For nitbal, the rezi was in the tevel state when it was in the other first guy's possession. So therefore, when you bought it, you bought the rights to the Meiser Ani as well. My time with the Rabbi Yossi, if that's the case, taka my time with the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Why is the Yehuda Nasi arguing that? It's a good svara. You bought the rights of the Meiser Ani. Why can't you keep them? Says more, you're right. Theoretically, you could keep it. Mishum knas. He takes away from you your right, not because of the Raisa, but because of the knas rabbanon. That you shouldn't keep your own Meiser Ani because it's not proper. If that's the case, my time at the Rebbe. Hey, if that's the case, what's the logic of Rebbe? He should agree to that too. Why doesn't Rebbe agree to that? Let's make a knas. You bought Meiser Ani. You want to keep it? No way. Why don't we make a knas? Just like make a knas by a Kohen. So I made a knas by the Levi in the Mishnah. Why can't we make a knas by the Ani? We'll take it away from him. Says more, I didn't want to make such a knas. My time at the Rebbe, Osher yesh biyoda likach. And Osher, you make him give out the Meiser Ani, he'll buy more fruit. You make him give out the 10%, he'll get it from somewhere else. Ani, ain't biyoda likach. It doesn't have the wherewithal. It would be not proper, not compassionate to take away from him the Meiser Ani and make him buy something for that 10%. So if you didn't make a knas for an Ani. Rabbi Yehuda Anosi Yomer, okay, Motziu Lilvos, and go borrow money and buy grain. Where's his business? He doesn't have money. So go borrow the money. Seems a little bit stern, but that's what he says. Rabbi Yomer, ain't no motzi lilvos. He's a poor person. He doesn't have a credit rating. He doesn't have a credit rating. He won't even be able to borrow money to go and buy the fruit corresponding to Maiseroni. So therefore, since that is the case, it will be cruel and improper to require him to give up, to relinquish the Maiseroni. That's where we allow him to keep it. And that is the Machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi and Rebbe. Hadron Olach Eludvarim. We will stop here this evening.